mandated to NMAC block program. His family supports Allen's mission, and he starts every day with faith has devoted and I'm sorry, and he starts every day with faith, has devoted his life to the uplifting and building of his community. Welcome, Allen. Welcome, Allen. It's a pleasure to have you doing this evening. All right, great.
Thank you.
No problem, no problem. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Okay, so next we have Chauncey Starling. Let's bring Chauncey up. All right. Now, Chauncey is a native New Yorker with many years of experience working in the LGBTQ community with various nonprofit agencies. Chauncey has contributed many ideas and concepts to break the cycle of homelessness, addiction, recidivism, and poverty experienced by this population by introducing access to services such as affordable housing resources, job trainings, addiction treatments, and counseling. He's worked with the poor, elderly, and individuals with mental illness, and currently works as a community health worker for New York Presbyterian Hospital, the Alliance for Positive Change. Chauncey primarily works with people living with HIV and AIDS, and is committed to working with his clients to get the medical care, peer support, and housing assistance they need to achieve health, happiness, and stability. Chauncey has also communicated with ballroom icons, leaders, and supports to educate the community on safer sex practices and crystal meth addiction. He loves doing what he does because he sees a part of himself in each and every client. One of Chauncey's strengths is proactive engagement. His motivation is to focus on making the world a better place. And his philosophy is that people who need people are the luckiest people on this planet. Chauncey, how you doing this evening?
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure. All right. Next, we have Lee Soldier Simmons. Can we bring Lee up to the panel?
Can you hear me?
How you doing, Lee?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
All right, great. All right, Lee. Lee was born in New York City, raised in the Bronx. His interest into public and community service started in the early 2000s after creating a legacy as a visual artist and entertainer. He's appeared in documentaries and major motion pictures like Saturday Church and the short films Walk For Me and Work. He's also appeared on TV shows such as Pose, New Amsterdam, and You. On the pages like Lincoln Center, and then on 2 Broadway productions. His image as a visual artist and a member of the House and Ballroom Community has appeared in the New York Times, HX Magazine, Next Magazine, the March 2019 edition of Vogue Spain Magazine, Power organization, and the NY Black Team.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I think we had a little cut off there. How you doing? Okay, might have froze there. So, all right. Next we have Vanessa Frost. Let's bring Vanessa Frost up. All right, how you doing this evening, Vanessa?
Good, how are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. Okay, so Vanessa Frost currently resides in St. Louis, Missouri. She's the Midwest mother of the iconic legendary House of Ebony. She walks film queen realness, face, sex siren, and occasionally performance. Vanessa is a clear man. Vanessa is here again. All right. And next we have Phyllis Pickens. Let's bring Phyllis up. All right. Hey, Phyllis, how are you? I think you're muted still.
I'm doing good. Thank you for inviting me again. And of course, I enjoy being a part of the ballroom scene. Yes.
Of course. Thanks for African-American lesbian with more than 30 years of experience as a nurse. Her career as a nurse spans over 3 decades. In the 90s, she began a radical working in the LGBTQ community, specializing in creating a safe and yielding environment for youth to receive special health care. She's also instrumental in her frontline work during the HIV/AIDS crisis. Her mission has led her to become an active participant in the first and longest running LGBTQ health program of Colin Lord Health Center. Today, HOT, or Health Outreach to Teens, continues to be on the cutting edge of providing sensitive and innovative care to our LGBTQ young adult community. In fact, an important part of our work consists of providing an innovative approach to the ballroom community. Her many years of work, vast knowledge, and dedication to the ballroom community earned Phyllis her stripes and title as a legend in the community. Thank you so much, Phyllis, for all that you do, and thank you for joining us. Next, we have Dr. Malebranche. Let's bring Dr. Malebranche up. Good evening.
Hey, sorry about that. I had to use the bathroom right quick. That's Zoom for you. What are you going to do?
All right. So Dr. David J. Malebranche is a board certified internal medicine physician and public health official with expertise in men's health, student health, racial inequities in medicine, and LGBT health, as well as the prevention and treatment of HIV and sexually transmitted infections. Dr. Malebranche is an experienced, my cursor was in the way. Dr. Malebranche is an experienced qualitative HIV behavioral prevention researcher who has completed several studies on sexual health among Black men of diverse sexualities. Thank you again, Dr. Malebranche. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you on the call.
Oh man, the honor's all mine. Dr. Tez, come on.
Not yet. Don't jinx it. I'm coming. Give me about a year. Oh, okay. All right. So again, it's a pleasure to have everybody here. I think the internet is a little sketchy, so bear with us. We'll probably be going in and out doing this all night. So if you missed something, just you need me to repeat it, just say that. I have no problem doing that. Okay, so since this is a conversation about COVID-19 and the ballroom community, we have a series of questions here, both medical related and community related. I kind of just want to start with like a general, feeling of the room. In like less than 30 seconds, what are your thoughts on the COVID vaccine? Are you taking it or not? Have you taken it or not? And if you've taken it, why? If you haven't taken it, why not? Alan, what's up? What are your thoughts on the vaccine? Have you taken it? Why or why not?
So for me, I have not taken the vaccine, and I don't plan on taking the vaccine as of right now because I've had an antibody test and I still have antibodies because I have had COVID-19. I did have COVID-19 and my body has to build antibodies. So as of right now, I don't see a need for me to take the vaccine because that's essentially what the vaccine is going to do. So I'd rather leave a vaccine there for someone else than that actually needs it than for myself. And as far as the vaccine goes, I understand how it works. I've read upon it, and I just wish there was more education on a widespread instead of just pushing the vaccine. I wish there was more education on the vaccine and more education on COVID itself, so that people will feel more comfortable with making a decision on whether to take the vaccine or not.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Alan. Phyllis, how about you? What are your thoughts on the vaccine? Have you taken it or not?
Yeah, I've taken it. I've completed the 2 doses of Moderna. I started out in the early part of it in December and finished the 2nd dose in January. Initially, I was definitely hesitant around it. I didn't trust it. And as many of my friends and I were feeling like they try to do something to us, that kind of attitude, But I was listening one night to 1199 meeting that we had, a union meeting, and this Black doctor came on and talked about her experience. And she talked about how her father had passed away from COVID, and her sister got gravely ill. And she talked about her being in the initial study. And so that caught my eye to think about how oftentimes we're not a part of studies, and that she did do something because she was concerned about her health and what was happening in her family. And so that caught my eye to listen to what she was saying. And so, one of the things that she said, get the information and be informed. And as a nurse, I do have access to information. I ask the questions, and that's how I came to the decision to go ahead and do it. And I surprised myself. I was working remotely, so I didn't expect to get the vaccine right away. But many people in the agency were reluctant to start with the vaccine, so they had extra vaccines to give staff, right? Because I'm a nurse, so we're essential workers. And so I told them, no, pass it on to someone else, because I didn't want to take what I'm working at home. It's not a problem. But when I talked to one of my doctor friends, they were saying, Phyllis, it's the community that you got to be concerned about. It's not so much coming into the clinic. It's really out in the community. And I, who am an elder, in a sense, I'm older, and I have comorbidities that affects me. And more recently, about 2 years ago, I had an open heart surgery. I said, well, let me not play with this thing. Let me go ahead and take care of myself. So as anxious as I was, I decided to go ahead and do it. And I'm glad I did. And actually, when I first got the shot, I felt like a relief, or a burden has been lifted. I don't have to worry. For some reason, I felt that way. It's like a spiritual awakening. And so that would start my journey. And then I started talking to others about, how they feel about it and what they think about it. Long story short.
I am so sorry. I was just over here talking and I'm muted the whole time. Thank you for sharing, Fearless. I appreciate your insights in that. Also, thank you for sharing your journey with us. Appreciate that. Who's next? Vanessa, how do you feel about the vaccine? Did you get it? Yes, no, maybe so. What are your thoughts on it?
Is my mic unmuted now? Okay. So as far as I'm concerned, I have not received the vaccine as of yet. When I do, I believe I'm going with Moderna, just because that's the most, I guess, successful vaccine that they have out right now, at least as far as my research goes. I have had COVID-19. I experienced it. It was not pleasant, not pleasant at all. And I wish, honestly, it was more information.
We're glad you're here with us.
Yeah, I feel like they're dropping like all of these different versions of the vaccine when it should just be one vaccine in total instead of everybody have. I think that's where a lot of the skepticism comes with the Black community, and where all of like the I guess the boogeyman rumor from. So I mean, I feel like they need to dim it down and come up with one stern vaccine that's going to alleviate all of the problems that we're experiencing in the community. So.
Okay.
Hello.
I can
He's
hear you.
frozen.
I think he's frozen.
Yeah, frozen.
I can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Frozen.
I can hear the rest of y'all. I just can't hear Martez, unfortunately.
I guess like maybe the next person should go with the same question so that we could just keep moving.
Yes. So if you have not already gone, can the next person proceed with question that was asked on how do you feel about the COVID-19 virus?
All right, so I'll go. So I had it. I had COVID, and I didn't have a real bad bout of COVID. But I have a lot of people in my life who died of COVID. So I have a friend who works for Mount Sinai, and she got me in a Pfizer COVID study. And so I've been vaccinated since September. My first dose was September, and my last dose was October. And so I was in the experimental stages. And I'm glad that I did it because, like, they explained everything to me thoroughly. They showed me the science. They called me every day. They sent texts. I felt really safe. I didn't feel like they were just shooting up something in me and I didn't know what was going to happen. I was a little hesitant and nervous because with anything new, there's side effects. But because of my community and because of the work I do and because of me talking on the phone to clients and different people and people wanting to kill themselves and drug addiction and mental illness and all of these reasons, not going to balls and making them a super spreader, all these reasons is why I chose to take the vaccine. And so far, I don't have 3 heads. They keep checking my blood. Everything seems good. So I think I made the right decision. So that's it.
All right. Can y'all hear me?
Sorry, yeah, he's back, y'all. We was having some technical difficulties.
Okay, yeah, my Wi-Fi disconnected and all that good stuff. So wouldn't be like right. Okay. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Chauncey. Okay, and Lee, how about you? What are your thoughts on the vaccine? Have you taken it? Why or why not?
Yes, I had the Moderna. I had both shots. I took it because I suffered from contacted COVID early last year, was hospitalized for almost 6 weeks, was on a respirator. So the whole experience for me was not a good one. So I wanted to do something to make sure that I would not have to deal with it again. But like most of you, I mean, I had my hesitations about it. I have my doubts. I think part of it was due to the fact that there are so many different versions of this vaccine, and necessarily the differences between each one really was not defined or explained.
Okay.
Uh-oh, I think we lost him.
Yeah, a little bit of technical difficulties.
Want me to
Okay,
jump
we'll come
in?
back to. Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, I got the Pfizer
Hello.
vaccine. Oh, he's here. He's back.
Come back.
Hello.
Okay, there we go.
I'm sorry. This thing keeps dropping me or kicking me out. I don't know particularly why, if it's the app or not. But anyway, yeah, I think I just had issues in not understanding the difference between the Pfizer and the Moderna and the Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca, the new one. Or really, us getting an explanation of what we're doing. And I think the way they were released, it really didn't give us much options in the beginning. The research information was kind of limited to know, the difference between the two and what the side effects were going to be different between each one or the benefits from them. So, but I did it just to make sure that I would not have another bout with being hospitalized for such a period of time and being on a respirator and stuff. So, but,
Well, thank you for sharing, and it's definitely a courageous decision. And glad both of you made it through, the bouts with COVID. Vanessa and Lee, and also thank you for being so courageous to share, your experience with us. And we're glad you're still here with us. So that's the most important thing. All right, Dr. Olive Branch, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I was, for most of the first half of 2020, I was in upstate New York in a really rural area with my mother after my father's passing. So we didn't get out that much. So I felt, I didn't know whether I was going to get the vaccine early because I wasn't seeing patients. I wasn't working at the time. And when I ended up starting a part-time job here in Atlanta at an HIV clinic, I decided to go ahead and do it. And it was more so along the lines of, you know, I wanted to make sure I protected my patients from me in case I got exposed and didn't know it, and then would pass it on to them. So I wanted to make sure that was okay. And I also was like, one of the reasons I didn't do it was similar to what Alan said, is that when I wasn't seeing patients, people were like, well, you're a physician, you're a healthcare worker, you should be getting it first. And I was like, but I'm actually not working in a clinic or a hospital right now. So why would I take somebody's vaccine for somebody else who may be more at risk of a serious complication for it? But I got the Pfizer vaccine, got both shots, finished in February, and pretty uneventful. The shingles vaccine was a lot more painful in my arm than the COVID-19 vaccine was. So I did okay, but I encourage people to get it. But the one thing I'm hearing with everybody talking here is what a lot of folks have been talking about, is the miscommunication, like the marketing, the communication, especially the Black and brown communities. It just wasn't there. And it reminds me a lot of parallels with HIV back in the day, almost like they didn't reach out to us. And so that was happening. There were pockets of us doing work and trying to get the message out there on social media and other forums, but it obviously didn't reach as many people as we needed it to. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for sharing your journey with us, sharing your information, sharing your story, wisdom. And then, yeah, I just want to concur. Yeah. That was one of the things that I was concerned about too, was like, you know, there's so much information out there. But also I feel like they did a terrible job, you know. I mean, I don't even know who they is, right? I guess that the powers that be, the institutions who were responsible for conducting these trials and the funding institutions, I guess. But, you know, I found even myself, I found it kind of difficult sometimes to kind of, you know, decipher through reports that I found, decipher through all the news reports and even some of the articles that were published. So yeah. I definitely think we need some educational campaigns up in here. Okay, so let's go to jump into the conversation. I really want this to be like kind of a free-flowing discussion. There are about 7 or 8 of us, about 8 or 9 of us in here, I'm sorry. So if we can kind of, you know, be mindful that other people on the call, we kind of want to keep our responses 1 to 2 minutes tops. That way we save room for the next person to share their thoughts and their feelings and their knowledge and wisdom as well. So I'm gonna start with one of our ballroom focused questions. And, you know, feel free to jump in wherever you may. So let's discuss the community's overall response to the vaccine. So for those of you who are more active in the community, who have maybe attended balls recently, or who are more tapped into the community, how do you feel the community has responded to these vaccines?
Are we going in a certain order, or can we?
No, not at all. Yeah, feel free.
Okay, so I've been to some balls. I've been to LA, I've been to Atlanta. I've experienced balls. But as far as I'm concerned, and houses in general, I feel like they don't take it as seriously. I see very little masks being worn. I guess because some people feel like since they're vaccinated, they don't have to wear the mask around people. I don't feel that way. Just because I still just the extra protection, just the safety net. But just I don't feel like anyone is really taking it seriously in the ballroom scene, honestly, as of yet.
Okay.
I mean, I could speak as far as my house is concerned. I know that we have been given an option to go to balls, which can you hear me? I don't know if I'm breaking up or not. Okay.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, normally you're expected to walk a certain amount of balls throughout the year. So during this time frame, I'm in the house of Balenciaga, by the way. We have been given an option to go to balls or not. It has not been forced for us to have to go to balls. So I think that is a safety precaution in itself, because you're not making people be in harm's way. You're not giving an ultimatum when it comes to ballroom or COVID. So that in itself is big.
Thank you both for those interesting tidbits.
So I've seen a lot of balls online recently, mostly in Atlanta, and I didn't see a lot of masks. And I know a lot of people in the ballroom community, and I talked to them personally, and I know that they weren't vaccinated. So yeah, I kind of think it was kind of unsafe. I have seen some certain balls, they did do temperature checks. They did tell them they're supposed to wear masks, but I didn't see, I saw people putting masks up and down, and this was in the height of the pandemic. So I think it's kind of dangerous, but that's just my personal opinion.
Okay. And so just kind of feed off of that. Our next question is, what do you think are some of the implications of, the Ballroom's community response to the vaccines, or just to COVID in general? What has been the result? Have we seen like increased numbers? Have numbers kind of remain the same? What do you like experience, in your personal lives in Ballroom?
Honestly, I don't think that there's been a study done in the ballroom scene to figure out if the numbers have increased or not. We can only speculate on what we've heard, but no one has actually done the study to say, okay, well, since people have been going to balls, there's been an increase in this community due to COVID. Of course, we all heard of people that have been to balls and there's been an outbreak, and we've heard, like I said, we can only speculate. We really don't know, because the work hasn't been done in the community.
Can I jump in real quick, Marquez?
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, you are absolutely right. There's no data out there that specifically focuses on that point. However, I want to go back, I want to tie that into something that Vanessa said, and I think also Chauncey, right? Chauncey mentioned that he's watched a lot of balls wherever, right? Recorded lives, and noticed that people weren't wearing masks, right? Vanessa said she don't think like people in Ballroom care enough. So I think then, just to dig a little bit deeper, then why do we think then that people are not wearing masks when they're at balls? Why aren't they protecting themselves? And why do we think that they probably are not focusing on protecting themselves as much as they should, right? Because we don't know, but we do know that we see on these balls balls that are being recorded, that we don't see people wearing masks, right? I mean, that's an indication right there, because we see that. So I think to push a little deeper, why do we think that's happening now, right? Why are they making those decisions?
I think a lot of these decisions are made out of misinformation.
Miseducation, right?
For example, it was a whole bunch of posts saying Black people can't get COVID, only white people. For a long time, young people can't get COVID. And if you get COVID and you're young, you won't die, so don't worry about it. And so a lot of young people go to balls.
Or just older people are getting it, right?
Yeah, the only older people are getting it, and your body will fight it off if you do get it, because you're young. So I've known a lot of young people who have died, but that was what the information was put out. So I guess people didn't take it that seriously, because that's what they were told. Like, it's a lot of just misinformation, which is why I think a lot of people are in the situations they're in. People don't want to take it. People are scared. People are this, people are that, because it's a lot of misinformation. So,
if I may interject, if you're done. So I honestly kind of refers and ties back into the AIDS epidemic that was back in like the early 90s and everything like that. If you guys remember, back in the ballroom community, AIDS in the gay community in general, it was very big, and everyone had an attitude in terms of, oh, we'll get through it, like we've been damned to hell. Can I cuss? So I think a lot of their mindsets are still along the lines of that in regards to COVID-19 versus it being, let me protect myself. So I don't think the times have progressed enough for them mentally. And that's just my take on that.
That's a really interesting perspective.
This is Phyllis. I just want to say a couple of things. I think there's truth about misunderstandings and myth, but I do know that sometimes for people, like, putting a mask on to dance or to vogue, it takes a lot, in terms of breathing. And I don't know if that's a challenge for people, and then they decide what risks I want to take right now when I'm doing this. So that could be an issue. I do believe that people do know what to do, and they're making decisions based on their experience so far in the epidemic. We've come a long ways, and we're at a point that more and more people are vaccinating now. And there may be some comfort level, but I know in the beginning, when we had this meeting last year, there was information that put out for the ballroom scene on how to protect yourself, but really, really taking care of yourself about distancing, hand hygiene, and masking when you're outside or when you're in a group of people. And so those things were like what we stood on, because there was no vaccine at that time. And unfortunately, a lot of people did get ill. That's the reality of it all. And there's a level in which I think that we believe we're invincible. Like, there's things that we say, black don't crack, things like that, things that we think in our heads that we think that may not happen to me. But this virus is a funny thing, because people can be infected and asymptomatic, similar to what HIV was like. And so it's a lot to expect society to embrace this stuff on how it can affect us, even though we hear the numbers of people being infected and people who died and whatnot. But I don't think everybody is like willy-nilly just doing it. I went, my family had this thing, and there were people from and my partner and I, we both were masked, was outside with masks anyway. And this is before they said you could be outside and don't wear a mask now. That's what they're saying now. And then we went into the house, and there was more than we had about 12, 15 people there, and they all did not wear masks. And me and my partner had the mask on because I didn't know their history about vaccination, etc. Some of my family, some aren't. And so, but there was this consciousness that went on that they did not wear a mask. And I know we had discussions around people say, I got tested, I was negative, so people are in the health field where they get access to testing and stuff like that. So I don't think people are willy-nilly doing it, but I do think that it's difficult. It's a challenge to follow these rules all the time. That's what I think.
So context matters, basically.
Yeah, I too want to say real quickly too. I think we also got to consider. Unfortunately, we got to talk about politics sometimes. When we have these discussions, and in certain states, right? I don't have to mention the names of those states, but there's no mass mandates in certain states. So I think when you got people who are living in those states just around, protection, I think a lot of times it reflects back on how the politicians in that area kind of respond to a lot of the guidelines. And I also too want to quickly say to Phyllis's point about wearing a mask when you're voguing. A lot of them wear effects, and sometimes they cover their whole face, and they still out there voguing. So.
If I may, sorry, were you about to?
Yeah, I was gonna say something, but you go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna comment on that, what you just said, sweetheart. So in regards to someone come with an effect on and they're covering their face and they're dancing with it on, it's honestly just for the moment. It's not necessarily saying, oh, I'm comfortable doing this. It's just for the moment. I understand what Phyllis was saying as far as the dancing with the mask on. No. Give me my space, let me vogue. When I'm done, I'll put it back on. But I can't breathe properly trying to dip and flip and twist around.
And it's already hot in there.
It's already hot in there. The AC doesn't work 9 times out of 10. It is a hectic environment to try and follow CDC guidelines and all of that. So it gets kind of sticky, and it becomes kind of in the gray area a lot of the times when it comes to balls. So I do understand both sides.
Yeah, it's like a social. I haven't been to a ball since what? I went to one little Kiki function that I probably had no business doing that, but I had a mask on and shield. But then the last pre-COVID function I went to was Alpha and Omega, and just there's so much going on at a ball, right? The last thing and then there are people there that we've been in quarantine There are people who we haven't seen in months, maybe years. And I could easily see how like the last thing on somebody's mind would be like, wearing a mask, right? Or even just, staying safe from COVID, because that's the default mentality these days. So, Alan, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted you to go ahead and say what you were going to say.
So, what I was gonna say is, I think that one thing that we are all forgetting is that ballroom is a lot of our escape from the world, right? And also in ballroom, people start drinking and partying and everything else. The last thing anyone is thinking about is a mask. I mean, honestly and truthfully, it's hot, like you say, it's hot. I mean, I'm coming here to have a good time, and I'm coming here to see the people I haven't seen, and this is our escape from the world, and the world is riddled in fear of COVID-19. So where do you go to escape these things? You go to a ball. I mean, and that's just my opinion of it. That's how I see it. It's an escape from the world. And so when it comes to this fear of the world, it's the one place to go where you won't have to worry about that. And I think that's part of the reason why people aren't thinking about masks. Maybe they may come in with a mask, but you start drinking and you start doing other things, and then you ain't worried about no mask. Last thing on your mind is a mask.
That is very true. And I'm going to actually piggyback off of that. So if you all remember when Ballroom was started, I know I keep going back to when Ballroom was started, but just barely. So it was a situation to where we were so beat down in society. We were getting gay bashed. We were getting, trans people were dying on the daily, getting brutally murdered in the middle of the streets, and nobody cared. We escaped that balls. So, of course, nobody wants to hear about society's rules at a ball. So I get where you're coming from on that. And that is another reason why Ballroom doesn't take COVID very seriously, I believe. Yeah, they'll do the little checks on the, the temperature checks and all of that. But as far as wearing a mask and following that guideline the whole time, I don't think it's going to happen just because they have that perspective towards it.
I mean, so Ballroom in that same breath, like I agree. And in that same breath, I wanna call attention to like our ancestors, right? Our ballroom ancestors who were very in tune with this notion of intervention, right? And earlier, Victoria, you mentioned something about like the community being so resilient, right? And that keeps coming up. Do you think it's possible for us to get to a point where we maybe come up with our own homegrown intervention or response to COVID-19 that helps us remain safe, right? But still also allows us to operate in that ballroom spirit?
Honestly, I think it could be possible, but right now, I honestly think that the ballroom scene is so riddled with so many other things that COVID-19 is just another thing on the list. I mean, we still dealing with HIV, we're dealing with meth, we're dealing with people still get kicked out of their homes, people still getting bashed, your friends are dying on a regular basis. There is no trauma treatment, so we just dealing with this on every day. People that you could be sitting next to at a ball, next thing you know, they're dead. And you just expect it to go on about it because you can't afford to go see a therapist. Like, I mean, ballroom is the escape of these things. However, ballroom still has its own problems within itself. So, I mean, COVID-19, yes, it's an issue. It's honestly, I think that on a bigger scale, COVID-19 in the world is a really big issue. Yes, but in ballroom has, like I said, it has so many other issues that COVID-19 is just another one on the list, and we'll get to it when we get to it.
I was talking to one of my friends. This was like right before like they started the lockdowns. I think they started ours on like a Tuesday, like March 17th or 20th. It was like a Tuesday, or Monday or Tuesday. And I went out with some friends, and I saw one of my girlfriends there, and I was like, sis, like, and we had masks on. She didn't have a mask on. I'm like, sis, you're not afraid of COVID? She was like, yo, I'm a Black trans woman. Like, things literally try to kill me every day. What the hell am I afraid of COVID for? Right. And I think that just like drives home the point, right, of what you just mentioned, Alan, and you too, Vanessa. What I'm hearing is I'm really hearing like this intersectional stigma, really like intersectional trauma, right? This layered trauma, right, that has to do a lot with people's identities, people's class, right, opportunities that they may not have been afforded or denied, right, because of their race or their class. And surely there are other things to add to that list. So I'm guessing what is the way forward? How do we move if COVID is just another thing in our bucket list, right? And then there are all these other things to deal with. How do we address those other things and still be mindful of COVID-19?
Well, can I say something? Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to say I like the word intersectionality, because I think that we have to look at each person as an individual. I think that some people are impacted COVID very differently. I think when COVID really struck and we were in lockdown, I think it impacted some people were dealing with isolation. Some people were dealing with other mental health issues. Some people were dealing with drug issues. Some people were dealing with domestic violence. Those numbers and stuff are completely on the rise. I think we sometimes tend to group everybody together in ballroom instead of realizing that we all live different lives. We all have different things that are impacting us. Some might have health situations that are impacting them from COVID or during COVID. Some have housing situations. There are so many people that are still homeless and dealing with that. Some people are dealing with financial issues, losing work, losing their jobs, just income of trying to survive and to eat. So I think when we talk about COVID in the ballroom community, we have to sometimes dissect the intersectionality of it and say everybody is being impacted from COVID, but in different ways. And so therefore also there's a lot of distrust in the Black and Latino community anyway, in general. And I think that people are also, when you talk about the vaccine and different things that are happening, people just don't trust it. It happened so quickly. There was no explanation of how all of a sudden they came up with not just one version of this vaccine. We're now working on the fourth version of this vaccine. We've been suffering with HIV and AIDS going on 40 years now, right? Since 81.
Can I stop you right there? Because I think that's a really, that is, I feel like the crux of me personally, like what I wanted to kind of like get out of this discussion. So you said about, like there's not an explanation of, right, how in virtually what seemed to be overnight, how we got these COVID vaccines rolled out, right? Whereas HIV, which has been around for over 4 decades, right? We're just now in the preliminary stages of, right, like finding something that's promising, right? And we do have a couple of healthcare providers on the call. I have my own knowledge of of how vaccines work, but I'm by far not an expert. But I'm wondering if anybody on the call, specifically you, Dr. Malabranch, or you, Phyllis, have anything to offer about like sort of research that's been done to date on coronaviruses, and then how they were able to develop those vaccines so quickly.
Yeah, I think I can address that. I think that's a legitimate concern from everybody, and it is, if we're looking at the intersection of things, we're looking at the history and present of medical racism in the medical community that justifies distrust. This didn't stop with Tuskegee. People are still being discriminated against today. So there's that part of it. There's also the part of it with the politics, when you have an administration that is treating it like a joke and a punchline and not really paying attention to what's going on. And then you have the fact that it's a pandemic. Have any of us either watching this or on this panel experienced a pandemic before? HIV is the only thing that's come close. Something this big, of this magnitude, that spreads this quickly, none of us knew what the fuck we were doing. And you saw scientists literally flying by the seat of their pants, trying to figure out what was going on. And we had to get used to information coming out in short bits. And so that kind of all contributed to it. The reason why the COVID-19 vaccine happened so quickly is that traditionally in the vaccine pipeline, and I know Stefan, the esteemed Dr. Wallace, is watching us as well. So I'd love for him to chime in and correct me if I'm wrong. But typically the vaccine studies happen under the purview of the federal government. And what happened this time was that actually you got an injection from these private organizations and company with money and resources to develop to this. And then in addition, particularly looking at the mRNA vaccine technology, that shit had already been done and it was already being worked on with Ebola, with other types of viruses, with HIV also. And so what they did was they basically took that science and they shunted everybody, all the work that was going there, and focused it on the COVID-19 pandemic because that stuff was going on at that time, and people were dying and getting sick. Hospitals were overwhelmed. There was literally something had to be done, and it wasn't. And HIV is a very different virus from coronavirus. HIV is a retrovirus, so we have to be careful about making these parallels and making it apples to apples. Yes, there is the social context of people. Once it hit Black and brown communities, once it hit our communities, there seemed to be a lot less influence on it, or people weren't pushing things ahead. But I do think there was like a confluence of factors that allowed the government, with the partnerships from the private industry, plus the urgency of how many people were getting sick from this pandemic, to move a lot quicker. They still did trials with tens of thousands of people, which is what you typically do in phase 3 trials for vaccines. But as it appeared, and again, this is where the communication comes in, as it appeared like it was just going up like that. And it appeared that Trump waved a magic wand and all of a sudden it was there, and none of us trusted that fool. So we were kind of like, what is actually going on here? But we didn't communicate, the medical community didn't communicate well enough about the dynamics that were happening that allowed this to move so quickly.
I also, thank you for that. I also want to add that, so Stefan mentioned, Obama was preparing for potential pandemics. We've seen two other instances that almost became pandemics in the past 15 years, SARS and MERS. Those are also, if I'm not mistaken, those are also viruses in the same family as the virus that causes COVID-19. And so there was a scientific literature base that has been in existence, right? That gave them kind of a basis, right, of how this virus operates, right? They still didn't know everything, right? They still don't know everything. And so that was that. But also, viruses like SARS, COVID-19, they're called zoonotic diseases, right? And they're zoonotic because they come from animals. They usually jump either from animals directly to humans or through some other passageway, some intermediary host. And that comes mainly because of us destroying the earth, right? Because we're destroying natural habitats. There are microbes being released into the environment that we don't know anything about. We're also in closer contact with animals and wildlife than we've ever been. Probably that's a bit too safe for us, right? And then you kind of couple that with the mass production of all these things. It's just.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Yeah. It's very interesting. I was speaking to a group of young people, and a young man asked me a very interesting question. Why is it called COVID-19? Is this the 19th version of COVID, or is it COVID-19 because it was discovered in 2019?
There you go. That's why.
Yeah. Very interesting.
The latter.
COVID is a group of type of diseases. It's not COVID itself is not an individual virus. Like the flu and things like that they're all considered COVIDs. So when they said they didn't have a name for it, so they just called it because it came about so fast. They needed to name it something, so they called it COVID because they knew it was the same type when they were looking at it. It was the same type of makeup as like the flu and things like that, and how it spread, and how the looking at it, how the makeup of it was. And then the year 19, and so it's a year where they actually named it. It wasn't when it was just discovered per se, but it was when they were able to actually put a name on it. So, and that's why they call it COVID-19. But actually, COVID-19 is really similar to SARS. If you look at any paperwork now, they will call it like SARS-2 or something like that. It's not actually called COVID-19 in professional paperwork.
Yeah, and the COVID-19 acronym was just Coronavirus Disease 19, COVID-2. The way you look at it is the HIV is the virus. The syndrome is called AIDS, Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome. With COVID-19, that's the disease syndrome that somebody gets. The virus is SARS-CoV-2, like you're saying.
So when I did the study, they told me that the vaccine was made from SARS. This is what they told me. So that's why it was, and they already had SARS on the earth. They knew what SARS was. So it wasn't like they just made it yesterday. They made it from SARS. Like actually, when I had to sign the waiver, because I'm still in the study for a year, I had to sign the waiver, and the paperwork said somebody put in the chat SARS 2, and so that's where it was made from. It was made from SARS, and so COVID's been around for a long time, but it just wasn't airborne. This is what the doctors explained to me, because I asked a whole host of questions before I let them shoot me up, and and this is what they explained to me. So it's not just out the sky.
Also, when we look at the vaccine, when you come to the mRNA, because mRNA is not new, but mRNA, the usage of mRNA is new, but the actual technique of mRNA is not new. They just denied the use of it. They said we're not going to use it. This German lady, she actually discovered the use of mRNA. That's what it's called, mRNA, and so now they just decided to go with it now. And actually, what it does is it seeks out certain antibodies that are developed to block viruses. So the same type of technique. So it also makes it faster to develop vaccines. It makes it easier and faster to develop vaccines. So that same technique that they are using in Moderna, which is mRNA, they actually have already started trials to use it for HIV vaccine. And it's already in like I think it's part 3 of the trials or something like that. They're already in human trials with the HIV vaccine using the same technique.
Is that I didn't know.
No, I think that's a great point, Alan. And the thing is that I actually was speaking to somebody today that was talking about it and had like kind of a broken understanding of it, and was saying, oh, the vaccine attacks the protein spikes of coronavirus. And I was like, yeah, that's not exactly how it works. It's that, you develop this mRNA and it's synthetic. I think one of the things that people didn't understand about Pfizer and Moderna is that this wasn't a diluted version of the virus. It wasn't a dead version or an activated version of the coronavirus itself. It was actually synthetic material, just genetic material that was being packaged in kind of like a cholesterol body to go into your cells, trick your cells into producing something that was very similar to the spike protein that coronavirus has, and then your body's own immune system starts to attack it. So it's literally just kind of a messenger that goes in there, equips your cells with the code, and then your cells start producing this spike protein, and then your antibodies attack it, your immune system attacks it. And that's all in preparation, which is the goal of vaccines in general, is to make sure that your own body is protected in case you come across the real thing. But people didn't understand that with Pfizer and Moderna. Johnson & Johnson is slightly different in that it uses an inactivated version of adenovirus, a common respiratory virus, but it's not going to make you sick. But it still is like, it's almost like a Trojan horse that goes into your body, tricks your body's cells to produce something, and then your immune system reacts. So the science behind it is the same with it. But I think people didn't understand because they thought, well, are you injecting the coronavirus directly into me? And we were like, no, that's not what's happening, particularly with Pfizer, with all 3 of the vaccines that are approved right now, but particularly with Pfizer and Moderna, those were more mRNA, as Alan was stating.
One more thing. Also, the vaccine does not stop you from getting the virus. It just stops the symptoms from being severe enough that it would kill you. It does not stop you, and that's another thing with that miseducation. You could get a vaccine, but you still are able to get the virus, and it might be even more dangerous for people that do not have the vaccine or antibodies, because that's what the vaccine is, making your body create antibodies to fight the virus off. But it can be more dangerous because you will be asymptomatic, which means you won't have no symptoms, and you could be walking around with this virus, and someone that does not have a vaccine or antibodies, they can contract it from you, and they can have a severe reaction to it because they don't have antibodies. That's when I said that I haven't gotten the vaccine because I have been tested for antibodies, and I do have antibodies, and I've tested often for antibodies, and if my body is still making antibodies, it's kind of repetitive for me to go and get a vaccine because I already naturally am making those antibodies to fight the vaccine. I mean, to fight the virus.
I want to
Well,
say
I would
this
like
to you,
to.
Alan. The thing that we don't know yet, we don't know actually how long natural immunity will last. And so
Right,
that's the
because the
question.
virus
And a lot
can
of people would say,
mutate.
yeah, a lot of people would say to you or to Vanessa or to Lee, like saying like, hey, if you've had it before, maybe the best one would be, scientists have entertained, maybe the Johnson & Johnson because it's just one. So you consider that you got exposed to COVID-19 or you got sick with COVID-19 as almost like a first shot of a vaccine. And then maybe the Johnson & Johnson is kind of a booster for you. And so a lot of people have talked about that too. It's really an interesting discussion, but we don't know because we're in the middle of this. So we don't know how long your immunity is going to last naturally. And we only know the vaccines will last maybe about, I think it's been about 7 months now. So that's all we can say for that.
But that's part of the issue, right? That's part of the problem in the education piece that we don't know. We don't even know what effect these vaccines may have on the body. We don't know how long it'll last. We don't know if we're going to need a booster. We don't know if we just need a whole new vaccine. We don't know as far as variations, how many variations it can last against, or if we would have to develop a whole different technique. Like this is an ongoing study. This is an ongoing. So, I mean, yeah, we can say well, we don't know how long.
Do you think that now that going into the future is going to be like the flu shot? We're going to have to get this at least once every year?
We don't know.
I think so. Well, listen,
Yeah,
I want to say something.
Honestly, just because of the percentage rates on each of the vaccines, like the Moderna, I think it's like a 60% success rate of you won't get the virus. The Johnson & Johnson is like an 80. So I think that's probably the correct answer to that, honestly.
Well,
just because of the success.
Statistics. Yeah. I agree with you. I think my approach is different. I was looking at it more from like a planetary health perspective. Though we have really talked, well, not us, but a certain group of people has really contributed to the destruction of like the planet Earth. And y'all, like they just put a timer up, and I think was it like Washington Square Park, like, it's like we have like less than 7 years to basically get our shit together, or we'll pass. And I don't know how true this is, right? They say it's based on scientific fact, but they basically saying we got less than 7 years to get our shit together, or our planetary health goes past the point of no return. And we don't know how long we will be here. I hate to be like a doomsday theorist, but and I honestly think, right, this is all over the scientific literature, but I think, right, a part of the ivory towers, right, is that they hide all of this shit from us, so we're not privy to it, not as much as we should be. But I don't know. I just think if we don't really, as a world, as a planet, similar to what you were saying earlier, Alan, if we don't change the way we're doing this, the way we're living, the way we are destroying climates and environments and natural habitats, this will just happen more, and it'll happen at an increased rate, and it'll be more and more intense.
Yeah, I just want to add a little something too, though, to the discussion, because it was a lot of discussion on what we don't know, and it's true because we're still studying. This is the pandemic, but we do know things have changed since we started vaccinating people, and I think the good thing about this is that that's the kind of conversations we got to have with each other. We have to be honest about what is happening. And the death rates are decreasing. There are countries who don't have the access that we have here in America, which that could get the vaccine. And so, I mean, there's a lot of discussion around what we don't know. But we do know that people's lives have been saved, and there's less hospitalizations, and the people who are being hospitalized currently now are people who have not been vaccinated. So these are things we do know. And then the important thing is to have a discussion with each other, with your provider, and make the decision that's best for you, because that's how we stay alive, instead of just instead of just looking at, oh, we don't know this yet, so let's wait and see. We don't know this yet. We do know what we do know now, and I'm not saying that I'm for or against it. I'm just saying be informed and have the discussions with the right people. And when we're with each other, think about what we could do, reduce the harm to each other. If we're in a ballroom scene and things are going on and you need to dance without the mask, okay, keep your distance and do it. But when you come back, you come to talk to me, maybe it's a good idea to put the mask on. Or if they don't put the mask on, you put your mask on. Like, that's the stuff that we need to think about. always rolling it around to protect ourselves. Because, to say that we don't know and live in the realm of ignorance, there's things that we do know and it is solid. And so I'm just saying, let's look at two sides of the page.
I agree.
Right.
I agree with
I
you,
agree with you,
honestly, because a lot of the times in the news and any information that is given out, it's more so on the tragic side versus the good what's happening. So I do agree with you that death rates have went down in almost every state. Almost every state I feel like has decreased at least 10% in deaths. So that is a good thing, and I do want to say thank you to the government for that.
Sorry.
Go ahead, sweetie. I'm sorry.
No, finish what you're saying.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
So I made a decision that I made because, and I heard what you said, Alan, about you don't know and you don't know what you put in your body. But I put a lot of things in my body that I didn't know. and I really didn't care. Let me be honest. I really didn't care. I used drugs. I was having sex. I didn't say, "Excuse me, do you have this in you? Do you have that in you?" I really didn't care. I didn't give a fuck. So now that they say this may or may not save my life, okay, I'll take it. So that was why I made the decision. Because you eat stuff, 10 years later they say it causes cancer, the air, the this, the that. So we all experiment.
Are at risk at some point.
You really don't know. Like,
we're all at risk. Right. Good point. And I think too, right, we're all at risk for something. And I think too, to Phyllis's point, right, what about what we do know? And I think we could also make that same argument about the fact that with this virus, we don't know a lot about the virus either. You know what I mean? And how they're learning new stuff about the virus and how it impacts us on a daily basis, right? So, what you know what I mean? How do you outweigh like those different conversations?
I think we can do both, though, right? So I don't think that saying I don't know or we don't know is a bad thing necessarily, because there's some things we don't know. And we've got to be honest with ourselves about that, because we're all experiencing this in real time. By the same token, like Phyllis said, we can walk and chew gum at the same time and say, you know what, these are the things that we do know. Let's celebrate some of these victories and let's do some of these other things. And let's look at the positivity of the impact this vaccine distribution is having, and then talk about solutions about how we get it out to the ballroom community more, how we make the education and the information and the empowerment more, so when people go to see the medical providers, that they're armed with the knowledge that if the provider discriminates against them or decides that they don't think they're a candidate for the vaccine, that we can actually advocate for ourselves and push to get what we rightfully deserve. So I think there's a way to acknowledge both that part of we don't know, because this is new to all of us, but yet we do have a lot of things to celebrate and be positive about looking forward.
Yeah, I think, for me personally, well, my mom, so those that don't know, my mom is a physician, so we have this conversation back and forth. So for me, it's a conversation that people need to have with their healthcare providers, and that's a decision that you will make on your own. But one thing she did, because my mom also had COVID, and she said, well, I test myself for antibodies and I'm tested often, so that's her choices on getting the vaccine or not. So the same go for me, that's my mom, of course. So when I follow her footsteps, I make sure I test for antibodies, but I'm not just sitting around not doing anything, and I'm not telling other people, hey, don't go get a vaccine. Do what's best for you. But for me, this is what's best for me based on the information and the knowledge that is available to me. I do believe that there needs to be more education and more knowledge given to the public. And honestly, I feel personally, as far as the ballroom community, the push that we have for people to get tested, well, why don't we do that same push for people to get tested for antibodies or get, for the vaccine or things of that nature? Those things could be shifted. The finances and things, the mission can be shifted to what's relevant now. Not saying that this is irrelevant. However, we know it's about the immediate threat, and this is what the immediate threat is.
What testing? Will you be testing for HIV?
What do you say?
When you say tested, what testing are you referring to?
I'm
COVID
referring
test?
to HIV. I mean HIV
Oh,
testing.
HIV
I mean,
testing. Okay.
because I've been to balls. I mean, there's balls that are centered around just testing for HIV. I mean, you could get into a ball for free, or you could, you know what I'm saying? So I feel as though the same strength and same energy that we put behind this, at least for now, until we get a hold on to this pandemic, and then there's a lot of education that is put into this, that maybe we should shift a little bit to the left and concentrate on the immediate threat.
Right. So what I was going to say, somewhat in relation to what you're saying. So we can shift focus, but I feel like the conversation that's been kind of brewing right now is doing maybe like a free ball and incorporating getting vaccinated. You get in free if you get vaccinated. And I feel like that'll get the ballroom community more involved. Like, oh, I don't have to pay $40 to get into a ball. Let me get vaccinated. You know, you go over there, you get your shot, girl, you're good.
But then we still have that problem of people not being educated on which vaccine to take, right? You say you get vaccinated, now which vaccine am I going to take? Or why am I taking this vaccination? So because we have to look down the road too, because if there is a follow-up and there has to be boosters, then you have to get those same people to go back to get those boosters. Because if not, then all your efforts are pushed to the wayside. We still have to educate our people on the reason behind why they need these things. There has to be some type of mass education that is done within the house, but I think it should go through leadership, because you listen to leadership for everything else. We can have meetings to vote.
What do y'all think about a campaign then? A campaign
so
can reach
what I was
multiple
going to add on before we go on to the next thing is we need to we need to incorporate that once the one shot is discussed. So once that one time we get the one shot, it's done, one and done. Then I feel like we can have that free event to get people vaccinated and get the ballroom scene back on track the way that it used to be, and not have any worries. Or
I think the focus needs to be on community and about all of us in this together. I think that's one of the things I don't hear enough, because we all have individual level decision making about the risks and benefits of the vaccine. And that's what we're hearing about when we're talking here. But the thing that's tricky about this pandemic is that what you do for yourself can actually affect somebody who's next to you. It doesn't just affect you. So if we can get people out of the space of just thinking about, well, I'm going to do this for me, or I'm going to do this for me and the person that's in my house with me, to think about, well, you know what? This disease is so contagious that when you go outside, something that you don't do for you, you may be okay, but it may actually adversely affect somebody else. That's getting out of kind of this American self, me first mentality into thinking about community. And I think when we do think about the ballroom community, we really have to think about the fact that everyone's gone. People have been talking about how the ballroom community is an escape from all this bullshit that goes on in our everyday lives, that this is something where you can bring people together. And if you market it, educate, empower, like we're saying, and say, hey, we're in this together. This is our community. We have to protect ourselves because we're dealing with enough fools on the outside. We have ourselves, we're family. That kind of messaging for us, by us, is going to be very effective. And I don't know if they're doing that now. I don't know if any of y'all have seen any advertising or any marketing, particularly with the ballroom community, but I think that would be helpful to make it more of like a community thing, that we're doing this all for us together.
I have a question. So instead of a vaccination ball, why couldn't it be a testing ball? Because then you don't have to deal with vaccination, but at least people are getting tested, and then they know where they stand, if they have antibodies, if they don't, and then they can be referred to their primary care physicians or whoever's going to give them a vaccination. Or whoever can give them a vaccination.
Probably have to be like a day before type event, that way so people can get in free, because a lot of the times when it comes to testing and why testing is as successful as it could be at balls, people are trying to get ready for the ball. They're trying to get ready for the category. They're trying to get their look on. They're trying, you know what I mean? So if doing that, it needs to be a day before thing.
And I want to be clear. My understanding is that there's two different tests. Testing for COVID and testing for, if you have the antibodies, it's two different tests. Yeah. So we don't want to project out to the community that you're just going to get, one test and go and now you know what's going on. I think some people have this misperception of thinking that, let me go and just get this antibody test and run with that. But I do think also the other piece to that is, forgive me, I forgot her name, but she had said, why can't we do more than one thing at the same time? I think it's really important for us to realize that the number of people being affected by STIs and HIV are on the increase. And so I don't think we should just say, we're going to put this aside and focus on just COVID. I think we should not lose focus that HIV is still impacting our community. But yes, it's still equally as important to let people know that COVID is happening, and we need to be aware of what's happening and how we're impacting others when we come to a ball situation.
So I personally think I don't think as a totality, let's say a whole year we're putting HIV testing. We're talking about, I'm thinking like one event, one event dedicated to this. And as he said, I'm not going there, so I'm so sorry. As it was stated before though, about the antibody testing, it's a similar test, and it is done when you're testing for antibodies of HIV. It's almost the same. And I mean, like you, Vanessa, as you said, day before, but what about this? If you want to walk this category, then you need to test these antibodies. You need to get tested. This is the qualification to walk this specific category. So guess what? Now you're a little bit more motivated. If you want to walk this category, you're going to make sure this gets done. I think
you gotta be. Yeah, I understand your point, Alan, and also Vanessa's, but we got to be really careful too. I think there's a few things that we really got to consider. For one, I think if we have one ball, you also got to think like Dave was saying. You got to do this from a community's perspective, right? So we all know Ballroom is huge. Ballroom is not just in New York. It's not just in Atlanta. So I think when we say a ball, right, what does that really mean? I think we should really consider a campaign, right? A campaign that, that will focus on education, like we talk about testing and all of those things, right? In that messaging, right? But when we talk about a ball, unless it's going to be, we have the latex ball in New York.
I honestly think a ball, like an education ball. So whenever I think of balls, anytime I think of like a ball, if I hear services or anything attached to the ball, I'm always weary, unless it's maybe a workshop, maybe the day before, something you could do virtually that's not too directly involved with it. But what I've noticed that works at balls better is if you just write a category that prompts people to go do research, right? Write $1,000 production, right? Bring us a 3 to 5 minute production talking about the nuances of COVID and how do you protect yourself against COVID, right? I could go on, right? But I like to think of it in terms of that, right? And you can also do the same thing for all the other things. We don't just have to talk about COVID at a ball. I really like the idea of having like a big, huge ball, right? We do $1,000, 10 categories, right? Bring a production, right? Under 3 minutes, something short and sweet, but significant, right? That'll force people to really mobilize around these issues, do some really heavy research and do some work around it. Because they'll learn, right? Even if they're not paying attention to why they're putting it together, they're going to absorb it and take in some of that stuff. So,
good point. So,
hey, and I just Tim, I just want to say one more thing is that testing is one aspect, vaccination is another aspect. Your wearing a face mask, hand sanitation, all it, distancing. They're all aspects of the whole thing. And when you talk about with STIs, it's the same thing. There's some things that we think that because, I'm taking PrEP, so I don't have to worry about HIV, but I do have to worry about syphilis, gonorrhea, and chlamydia. So it's like all those things together. It's not separate. And we need to talk about the fullness of all these things and how important it is for us to think about how we're going to reduce harm to the community.
Right.
Okay, to the community. And so, and also we need to also think about how they're putting information out about how we're hesitant. It's not that we're hesitant. We're smart about it. We just need to let people know that we don't all think alike. Okay.
Right.
And we have ways in which we're going about it differently. But our hesitancy is not hesitancy. It's really an informed decision that we're making. That's the key point, that people walk away with informed decisions that they're making so they can govern their lives in a way that they're going to stay safe for themselves and in the community.
Right. Thank you for that, Phyllis. Any final thoughts, y'all? Because we kind of ran out of time a little bit.
This is a really great discussion.
Go ahead, Martez. Do what you do.
I was just saying, this is a really, really, really amazing discussion. I feel like I really wasn't necessarily needed as a moderator because, the conversation was so organic and it just naturally flowed, right? Without us really having to pose so many questions. So thank you all once again so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us. So,
anybody got any last thoughts though before we go? Alan?
I got one thing. I think that that we should leave this, whatever way we decide to go forward with this, it should all be led with love. We're doing it because of the love of our community and the love of ourselves and the love of the people around us. Not the fear of the virus. It's not because we're afraid. It's because we love ourselves enough to do it. And I think that's one thing that gets left out of a lot of these campaigns or a lot of these things that they do out of fear. And it's not for fear. We do it because we love ourselves enough to do it.
And I'd like to... Go ahead, I'm sorry. Okay, well, I was going to say, I'd like to add that I think that sometimes when we have these discussions and we talk to medical professionals, sometimes we forget that we need to meet people where they're at. And a lot of people in the community necessarily don't always understand the language or the terminology that we use. And sometimes we have to think about ways of how we get the information out to the community, how we disseminate this information and get it out to everyone. It is in a way that it is what's the word I want to use? That it's approachable to everyone.
Relatable, right?
Everyone can digest it. I also think that because there has been such a lack of information or stuff that's been out there was not necessarily sufficient in really explaining the vaccines and the differences of the vaccines and why you should take it. I think everyone has definitely made a point about us talking about community. We hear a lot about people talking about protecting themselves. People saying, I got the antibodies. Okay, you're talking about yourself, but how is that necessarily impacting us as a community? And going to a ball function saying, I got the antibodies, it's not necessarily talking about how we're talking about dealing for the community. So I think that one of the things maybe we could talk about doing is how do we, all of this information that's coming in, all these things that are happening, as you said, we are still learning. They're still learning about how long this vaccine is going to last. I heard some talk about, the Pfizer saying they know that it at least lasts for 6 months. And like there's still so much learning going on. But how are we getting that information to the everyday person? How's that person getting to understand or have access to the information? I think that that's the important part. If we're going to talk about Ballroom, is how is Ballroom going to get access to understanding what all of this stuff necessarily means to them in the bigger picture? I don't think that anyone really...
Ballroom We Care website.
Well, this is great.
Put some stuff up there.
We had this conversation. So how do we frame the information that came out in this conversation now that it's accessible and approachable to everyone? That's my point.
I just want to put this out there real quick. So I just recently went to a bowling party, and they made everybody show their vaccination, and so everybody had to be vaccinated to go to this party, and it was like 20 people. And so moving forward, I hope that, that can happen with the Ballroom community, that, everybody can do whatever they need to do. I'm not endorsing the vaccine, but so we can be a community again and get out and do things together as a community. So I feel it was great. I had a great time bowling. Everybody didn't have to wear their mask because everybody was vaccinated. They said they do know that herd immunity equals lesser chances of super spreaders. So want to put that out there. So thank you for having me.
Phyllis, Matt, Dave, any last words real quickly? Or Vanessa? She's still here? Where'd she go?
Yeah,
I would just, go ahead, Phyllis. Go ahead, Phyllis.
I was just gonna say, I said my last words, and I really appreciate the discussion we're having. And there's ways in which maybe in Ballroom We Care, the website, they could put like updates, new things like now that the pause is off the Pfizer, what does that mean? Some little update each time that comes along to help us know, so that when a person look at Ballroom We Care app, they may know something new that's going on. That's another way to alert community. But I love that part about the skits and stuff during the ballroom. I think it's very creative, and it helps people to research what they're doing and talking and displaying about.
Yeah, I think there's funding out there, and I want to put a plug. I worked with the Kaiser Family Foundation and a group of other Black physicians, nurses, and researchers with W. Kamau Bell to put these kind of short little video clips about commonly asked questions around the COVID-19 vaccine that's been received and shared. It's been responded to very, very well. And so I think particularly with the ballroom community, if it comes from members of the ballroom community, you don't need a whole lot of funding to produce short little videos like that, but react to very common questions that you're hearing or common statements that you're hearing from the kids in the ballroom to basically say, well, let's answer those questions and do it in real time. And shit, you can do this on a YouTube video at the second. You could do it on Twitter. You could do it on Snapchat. You could do it on TikTok. You could do it wherever you want. But I mean, we are the ones that have to come with these answers, because if we're looking for the CDC or the NIH or all these other organizations, we're going to wait forever. So we have to actually put this information out there in whatever mode that we feel will best reach the people. But we can't underestimate the power that we have as individuals and as a community to answer these questions that we're hearing in our own communities. We can't wait on these other organizations to do that for us.
I absolutely agree.
Thank you. Vanessa, any last words?
Yes, so I was going to say, in regards to that, getting the information out and everything like that, Pride is coming up. Just be mindful, everybody. And that is a lucrative way to get out information, especially because there's a lot of Pride balls coming up and things like that. So just be mindful and try and get whatever information out and whatever new knowledge comes your way, get it out. Just like the legends and the icons go up there and they say, whatever they need to say to the public, a ballroom, ask the promoter of the ball or whoever's running it, can you, spew a few words of knowledge really quick? If you can give some funding to a ball to sponsor a category that has, COVID-19 knowledge connected to it, then that would be great. You know what I mean? And that way, so you could get up there and do your thing and say what you need to say as far as COVID. As far as the antibody test, as far as getting vaccinated, that sort of thing. So
thank you all of y'all. This was amazing. This was awesome. Really good knowledge. And this is not going to be the end of it, right? We're definitely gonna all the suggestions and all the things that we explored here, we're gonna take it a step further. And I just want to say my last words is, if there's anyone out there who is planning to have a ball and you're looking for PPE, masks, masks or hand sanitizers, reach out to us. Ballroom We Care can provide that for you. We can ship it to you. Don't reach out to us 2 days before the ball, though. You got to mail it from New York. You can go to our website. You can find me on Facebook. Find us on Instagram. We're everywhere. Twitter, YouTube. Reach out to us. We got you. All right. See ya.
All right. Later. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Everybody.
It was a pleasure working with you guys.
Take care, folks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Be safe. Be vaccinated.
Yes.